Hey everybody, it's your favorite gentleman, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And today you all are in for a treat. This is last but not least, I have a special guest tuning in to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. This man is a medical professional, pediatrician by trade, but he is here to help us talk about his activities with the community and how he has impacted the lives of children. You won't want to miss 1 second of this dynamic speaker. Stay tuned, stay with us, stay engaged as we proceed. Here we go. Hey everybody, it's your favorite gentleman, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And today I have pediatrician Mr. Robert Saul, MD. He's been guiding parents and their children's physical, behavioral, and mental care for over 40 years. The author of Conscious Parenting and My Children's Children, Dr. Saul developed the Parental Awareness Threshold, a simple framework that guides parents and guardians to actively parent with self-awareness, empathy, and compassion. Parents who use his framework create a healthy environment where children learn to build safe and stable and nurturing relationships, as well as exhibit love, respect, and others in their community. So help me welcome to the stage the incredible, the amazing Dr. Saul for their others in their community. So help me welcome to the stage the incredible, the amazing Dr. Saul for their others in their community. So help me welcome to the stage the incredible, the amazing. How you doing, good doctor?
I'm doing very well. I hope you are, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are doing well.
I'm doing very well. I hope you are, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are doing well.
I'm doing very well. I hope you are.
We have a little bit of feedback. We are doing well.
I'm doing very well. I hope you are.
We have a little bit of feedback. We are doing well.
I'm doing very well. I hope you are.
We have a little bit of feedback. We are doing well. We have a little bit of feedback. Doctor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Apologize. Sorry about that. That's uncommon. So, doctor, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who has guided you? Who has mentored you? Who has nurtured you in this profession to lead you to where you are today? Doctor, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who has guided you?
I do have feedback, so I'm getting multiple messages, but let me just go ahead and start. It's been an interesting journey for me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's been an interesting journey.
Is there another? Do you have multiple screens up with this playing?
No, I don't.
Yes. Is there another?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay. That was unique.
Yes. Okay. Let me. This has been an interesting journey for me. I finished medical school in Colorado, did a pediatric training at Duke University, and then did a genetics training in South Carolina. And so I jumped into medicine sort of full force, wanting to be the best doctor I could be. And this was starting in the late 70s, and really engaged and wanted to make sure I was doing everything I could. I must admit, after about 13, 14 years, I felt like I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing for my community. That as I was so engaged professionally and so engaged personally with my family, that I wasn't paying back to my community. I happened to then hear a talk in 1993 that had a profound impact on me. And you'll hear this profound impact of the stream of our talk here today, our time here today. A healthcare futurist said, for anything that happens in your community, you should think of 12 words. I am the problem. I am the solution. I am the resource. Now, the interpretation that I had with that is no matter what is going on in the community, the problems are mine. I need to take personal ownership in them. Otherwise, we're not going to sort of get to where we need to get to. To do that, I need to be part of the solution. And to do that, I need to devote my resources. So it's not their teenage pregnancy problem. It's not their drug problem. It's not their whatever problem on the other side of town. It's my problem because I live in the community. Now, I must admit, it took me months to sort of figure out how to internalize that and make it a sort of an action plan. So I went to some folks and said, put me in. I'm ready to do some work. And I got real engaged in the community. I was really excited, maybe even smugly so. I thought, oh, wow, this is really good. I'm really being a good citizen now. And then 1999, April 20th, Columbine. 2 teenagers walk into a high school in Littleton, Colorado, kill 13 people, kill themselves. That had a profound impact on me in the end. So I asked myself the questions, could that happen in my community? And the answer was yes. Could that happen, or what have I done to try to prevent that? And the answer was not enough. Oh. So then I sort of went through a serious introspection. And for the first time, I sort of sat down and put pencil to paper. We did that back then. So I wrote an article for the local newspaper about what each of us could do to improve our community. And I pinned at that point were the 5 steps to community improvement. And I'll go through them with you because I think it sort of allows me the thread of what I'm going to talk about here. And feel free to interrupt with any questions along the way. The 5 steps to community improvement are: 1, learn to be the best parent you could be. 2, get involved. 3, stay involved. 4, love for others. And 5, the toughest, forgiveness. And so over the course of the next 12, 13 years, I wrote over 160 articles for the local newspaper about these 5 steps to community improvement. And subsequently put those into a book, into my first book, My Children's Children, Raising Young Citizens in the Age of Columbine. Because I really think those 5 steps make a big difference in terms of how we can make a difference. So let me just go through them briefly. Learn to be the best parent you could be. Not everyone has the same ability. And so it's easy for me as a pediatrician to say, this is what you should do. I recognize not everyone has the same capabilities because of their education, because of their situation in life, because of their socioeconomic status. So my job was to maximize their ability to be the best parent they could be. Get involved in what's happening in your community. But it's tough to stay involved. Sometimes you get involved with one thing, that doesn't work, so you switch over to something else, and that's fine. But the important thing is to stay involved in what's happening. The 4th step is intuitive, but we don't do very well these days in our current society. Love for others. We're quick to blame. We're quick to quote hate, and that doesn't work if we're going to get to the next level in terms of working together. But the toughest step for me was forgiveness. And I must admit, I've been on a forgiveness journey to try to understand this. And let me give you an example about that one. When your 4-year-old bops your 2-year-old and you say to the 4-year-old, tell your brother you're sorry, that's a mode of forgiveness, but it's very different than what you would expect a 10-year-old to do, than what you would expect a 20-year-old, 40-year-old, 60-year-old, 80-year-old. So you should evolve through various stages of forgiveness. And related to that is the great little book. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Tuesdays with Maury.
I have not.
Mitch Albom wrote this book. Mitch is a sports reporter, and he interviewed his prized college professor who was dying from Lou Gehrig's disease, and he went to visit him every Tuesday. And one of the messages that Maury Schwartz has was 3 stages to forgiveness. Forgive yourself first for what you're feeling, for what you have or haven't done. Forgive others and do it now. So those steps sort of got me going in terms of trying to understand about forgiveness. So I put all those 5 steps together and penned my first book, My Children's Children, Raising Young Citizens in the Age of Columbine. And that was sort of the first step on my journey. The next step was putting a children's book out about that. It's called All About Children. And that's a very different children's book. It's a series of 13 illustrations. Fortunately for everyone, I didn't do the illustrations. Someone else did a beautiful job. But it's a series of 13 circumstances that emphasize what we can be doing to help each other. And what I mean by that is the kids shaking hands after a Little League game, going to an animal shelter, visiting the senior center, sitting in the living room reading with the TV off, a mother breastfeeding, a variety of things. And the children's book is meant to be enjoyed at multiple levels, for kids to read, for parents to try to understand, and for even babies to look at for just the pictures.
So it makes us all accountable. Is instead of blaming other people and pointing the finger at other people, we have our part to play. We have the opportunity to make a difference within our own circle of influence, right?
Right. And that's, to the point of the first book is really, I think we've lost our compass in terms of becoming citizens. Citizens care for each other. Citizens empathize with each other. Citizens show compassion for each other. Citizens lift up each other. And I think so. The job of each of us is to be a good citizen. An interesting sidelight to that is sometimes I remember a lot of people say to their children, "I just want you to be happy." And when my parents divorced, I remember saying that, "Bob, I just want you to be happy." Now, if you take that quite seriously, you can then say, well, almost anything, and say, well, my mother told me I just need to be happy and I don't have any other responsibilities. And so as I've learned as an adult now, as with my own children, that what I really want them to be is good citizens. I want them to care for people. I want them to empathize for others. And if they're good citizens, then I think they'll be happy. So I think happiness is a secondary effect of the primary goal of raising good citizens. And so that's sort of those things sort of evolved for me as I looked through the citizenship journey, as how to make a children's book that could make some sense into my last book called Conscious Parenting, Using the Parental Awareness Threshold. And let me give you a little bit of background to that. When I took a new job in leadership in a medical institution not far from here, they had a program called Conscious Leadership. And it boils down to just being conscious of where you are, understanding of where you are. You might be in that 3:00 meeting, that 3:00 production meeting for you, and you say to yourself, this is the most boring meeting I've ever been in. When's this going to finish? And we've all been there. And so how can we make it? The whole point is, if you're conscious about it, if you're conscious that you're really not paying any attention, you really think this is absolutely terrible, then maybe you can start to think, well, what can I do to sort of engage? What can I do to do better and to understand and listen to people? So they talk about a line. When you're above the line, you're open, you're receptive, you're willing to learn. When you're below the line, you're closed, you're defensive, and you're always right. Now, as human beings, we're going to be above and below the line all the time. But the point about it is being conscious about it. And that's where I think parenting is. There's no map to how to be a parent. I don't think it's an innate ability. I think it's a myth that it'll all just come to you. It didn't come to me, and even as a pediatrician. I think we all need We all need help. And the whole point of this last book, Conscious Parenting, using the parental awareness threshold, is thinking of the parental awareness threshold as the line. When you're above the line, you're open, you're receptive, you're listening to your children, and you're ready to learn what they're telling you. When you're below the line, you're closed, you're defensive, you're always right. Because I told you so, I'm the parent. And there's times when you're going to be above and below the line. It's just that you need, so long as you're receptive to understanding that, because you're going to want to, at times, you need to pause what's happening, assess what's happening, and then choose to make a decision. You might make the wrong decision. And I made plenty of them. And so the point is, in the moment, you want to sort of pause, assess, and choose. But even if you realize in retrospect you screwed up, then in retrospect, pause, assess, and choose, and figure out how you could make a difference going forward.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Mr. Bob Saul, y'all. We have a quick commercial break. You guys don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Stay with us. Stay engaged. We'll be right back. Good day, podcast listeners. This is your boy, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. I wanted to let you guys know that we will be rolling out a new feature and adding a join sponsor button next to the subscriber button here at the bottom of your screen. Once you click the button, it will display 3 membership levels. Gentleman Gentry, which is our entry level. Duke Duchess, which is our season level. And the Emperor and Empress, which is our most sophisticated level, which you will receive unique perks and benefits at each differing level and gain access to our community tab. We will also be sharing polls, upcoming events, and interviews, as well as receive feedback from our sponsors directly. Your support helps me find new and exciting guests to bring to the stage live. Well, in order to get the higher end speakers, it requires, some, you guessed it, money. So thank you for tuning in to my channel. And if becoming a sponsor sounds good to you, then select the join button below and choose your desired sponsor level. Let's continue to grow and serve the future of generations of men and women to come. Love you guys. Bye. We are back. Welcome to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And we have Mr. Bob Saul, Mr. Robert Saul, and he's here teaching us about how he has been a huge activist in his community and he's made the transition and still practicing. You're still practicing. Is that correct?
No, I actually retired in the end of 2020, but I'm still very much in. It's interesting. I wrote a blog about pediatricians retire. I think we retire, but we never withdraw from engagement, and so that's why I'm very much engaged with children's advocacy and community improvement. I'm the president of the South Carolina chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics this year, so it's keeping me very busy, especially here in South Carolina as we're trying to mount significant efforts to protect our children. So it's keeping me very busy.
Absolutely.
And again, as we talked about those 12 words, I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource. We can change the pronoun. We are the problem. We are the solution. We are the resource. And so my job is to try to get that message out there as best I can.
And you are. I wanted to address Miss Erica. She's a VIP sponsor of the show. Thank you, Miss Erica, for your contribution for the show. It helps us grow the channel and find new and exciting guests. She also has a question for you, Doctor. Her question is, as a parent of a teenager, how do I engage properly with the understanding we are not technically friends?
Well, parenting teenagers is a toughie, but I still think you need to understand sort of the complexity that teenagers go through. So yes, I guess you're not friends, but you are the parent. And there's times when when the child, be it a male or female, is going to be very dependent on you. And there are times where they're going to push you back as harshly as they can as they can go through their independence growth. I think the point is you need to be aware of those circumstances. I mean, there's times when you're going to have to cut them some slack and understanding what's going through. There's times when you have to make that tough call of, no, you can't have the car keys tonight because of blank. But if everything goes well, in 2 days you can have your car keys back, or because you didn't come back at midnight and you came back at 1 o'clock. I think there's, you just need to look at the circumstances and try to understand. I think the most important thing for me in terms of being a parent is flexibility without giving in excessively. That really sounds stupid, I guess, but I think it's where you need to be. If let me answer in a related way. One of the questions always comes up: how do I discipline my child? And some people use the word discipline to mean punish. I think the important thing of remembering about discipline is the root word for discipline is disciple. And disciple means to teach. So what we're trying to do is to teach our teenagers. They might not hear the message at the time, but you'll be surprised. And I suspect you also, Erica, will remember back then 20 years later, you go, Mom, Dad, you were right. What you told me then was right. So I think you have to be consistent. You have to stay the course. You have to fight the good fight and just keep going.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. That was very well said. She has a follow-up question. How can we be the best parent in the age of technology? Should we incorporate more technology into parenting, or do you think less of it? We need to be face-to-face.
Well, my bias is less of it. And I think whenever we go out to supper, it's almost every table, everyone is just sitting there looking at their phones. Now, have I been guilty of the same? The answer is yes. And so we need to unplug as much as we can and talk. One of the things I talk about in the book is, especially with young children, is when you're talking to your children, put everything down, look at them, pay attention, and don't be distracted. It's too easy to sort of look around and seeing what's happened. To me, that sends the wrong message. What you're telling me is not important. And matter of fact, it's a distraction. Can you get it over real quickly? Because I want to look at something else. So you really need to engage, and you can only engage face to face as much as you can.
Love that.
If I could, let me come back to forgiveness, because I think that's so important. One of the things I've learned is trying to understand the path to forgiveness. I had said that Maury Schwartz said, forgive yourself, forgive others, and do it now. There are circumstances where it's not going to be easy to do it now. My own father was an alcoholic. And died early because of his alcoholism and his smoking. And there were times, looking back in retrospect, when I go, how could I ever forgive that? But I realized I need to move on in my life. And if you've seen the movie Field of Dreams, when you recognize that at the very end, when Ray is playing catch with his father, that's what I would like to be doing now in retrospect. And then if you've seen the movie A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Mr. Rogers, and the reporter that was following Mr. Rogers talked about, my dad, he's a real pain in the patootie. I just can't connect with him. Mr. Rogers said, he's had some good points. You need incorporate what you can, and understand how you can work better going forward. So those are the things I've sort of done in retrospect now to try to understand. And it sort of helped me going forward, because if there might be contemporary situations where I've been harmed by somebody, it's easy for me just to internalize that and say, they're bad, I'm good. And I think I need to try to understand what the circumstances were that might have led to that. The other important thing I've learned from forgiveness is communal forgiveness, community forgiveness, social forgiveness. And an example for that is the American Medical Association years ago did not allow Black physicians. So they actually banned Black physicians. In the about 10 years ago, they tried to rectify that in terms of admitting what they had done in the past, and said, it wasn't us. It wasn't the people that are writing this article right now that have done this. It wasn't me that did it, but it was us as an organization. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to acknowledge this so we can alter our moral compass going forward. Because that's what the whole point of forgiveness, I think, helps us with our individual compasses and our social moral compass going forward. Another example here in the South is the Confederate flag. A lot of folks that say, it's just a symbol of heritage. It wasn't me. No, it wasn't. It wasn't you, but it was us. And if it's such an abhorrent symbol now, then we need to be taking steps to correct that and understanding that. So this whole forgiveness journey has been a personal one, but for me, it sort of try to help groups that I work with and young physician trainees that I worked with and other things to try to understand the process of forgiveness. It's never easy. And I've read multiple books about it. And when I think back to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa with Nelson Mandela, and working through all of that. That was years, probably decades in terms of getting through that. The massacre in Rwanda, the genocide in Rwanda, they subsequently brought the victims together with the assailants to get them out of jail and to go through a reconciliation process. As people, as a social group, we will never have reconciliation until we can practice forgiveness and understand it. But it's a journey. It's a real journey.
It's not easy. That makes sense. Sense. I want to jump to parenting a little bit one more time. You discuss this, you go into detail on this in the book. And what should be our goal as a parent? Is it the happiness that you mentioned it's not necessarily the happiness that we should be focusing on, but making them good citizens. Do you lay out what identifies a good citizen? What makes a good citizen? What are the benchmarks? What are the markers that we should be shooting for, or our children should be shooting for?
Well, I've actually got it right in front of me. I can't. But I think one of the things is we want to be consciously aware of what we're doing. We need to always be willing to learn. We always need to be willing to understand, and we always need to be willing to alter accordingly. Change is sometimes hard. Change is sometimes necessary. It isn't always necessary, but we need to be willing to listen and be consciously aware of what's happening with that. Then we need to sort of accept instruction. We can't just read what we want to read. We can't just listen to what we want to listen to. We have to be willing to accept instruction. We have to be willing to engage, and we have to be one of those 5 steps to community improvement. We need to be willing to be involved. And then sort of the basic traits, I think, are patience, persistence, optimism, ability to change, sustained involvement, rational discourse. If you're just going to sit there and yell at somebody, nobody's going to listen to you. You have to have then empathy, humility, sincerity, vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable And that's tough. None of us want to be vulnerable. And because you really need to be willing to say, okay, I need to open myself up here, and this is going to make me vulnerable. But if I really want to exhibit love for others, if I really want to say that I'm honest in my journey on forgiveness, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. Now, obviously, you can spend a lot of time saying, well, I'm too vulnerable. And how do I deal with that? That's a sort of a separate issue. In my book, I'm just trying to lay out what I consider to be a good roadmap of things. And I go through examples in there about how to deal with a colicky baby when you're frustrated and when you're tired, how to deal with a 1-year-old that's throwing peas on the floor and everyone thinks it's cute, but you don't, because you're at your end of the rope and it's the end of the day. How do you deal with your 5-year-old who won't go to school? How do you deal with your 10-year-old that comes home with terrible grades? How do you deal with your teenager that's you're worried about bullying, whether they're the victim of bullying or even the bully themselves? So I have 10 plus examples in the book of how to deal with those. Again, it's not the kind of book it's going to have all the answers for you, but I hope the whole point of the book is a framework. If you have a framework, if you have a scaffolding you can work off of, you can work on the building, you can put the bricks up. I mean, whenever you build a house and you're going to put bricks on the outside, you have to put up a scaffolding so you could haul the bricks up and put the bricks up. The whole point of this is the scaffolding and the map going forward.
That's so true. We have another question from Miss Samantha Dorm. Great question. Miss Samantha asks, when children need help, what can parents do to advocate for their children to attain assistance in that same community?
It's a great question, and obviously you need to. Physicians, pediatricians are well versed in trying to work with this. Hopefully, the school should help you with that, and you want to be that strong advocate for your children. For example, parents will oftentimes say, well, my school won't do this for my child. And I said, well, you have to be the strongest advocate for your child, but you have to be nice about it. You have to be gently persistent. You've got to be there and let them know you're not going to stop. But then engage your pediatrician and they know how the resources to help you work through those issues. Because if your child needs more screening, if you're worried about this problem with your behavioral issues, you're worried about that, there are resources that your pediatrician and other people out there can help you try to get. Life isn't perfect. Even though you might get to some resources, you really have to fight hard for what your children need.
That's fair. She follows up with another follow-up question. Due to COVID, they are now going back in person. They have become so isolated. How do we get them through this hump of reintegration, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I think you have to, where I am, we're trying to argue that children need to be in masks still when they're in close quarters because of the risk of COVID, especially when the Delta variant. But I think it's so important as they're going back to school that we emphasize that, yes, you have that mask on, but you can still look into the eyes of your friends. You can look into the eyes of your teacher and the other people in the classroom, and you can still engage. Don't let the mask, which is just trying to keep germs away, be a barrier to what you're trying to do in terms of engage. And remember, when we talk about social distancing, we don't really mean that. We mean physical distancing. We really want you to continue to be social. We really want you to continue to engage in your fellow students. So that's really important. And I think the other analogy I heard recently that's really good is, especially with children, and because everyone has different means, like I was talking about, learning to be the best parent you could be. Some people have said, well, with this COVID, we're all in the same boat. No, Not really. We're all in the same storm. Everyone has different boats.
Mm.
Some people with means might have what you and I would consider to be a yacht. Some people might have a fishing boat. Some people might have a dinghy. Some people might have a rowboat. And some people might have a canoe with a hole in it. So it's important as we're getting together and getting back engaged with children, it's important for the parents to sort of ask the children to empathize with their fellow students if they might be in very different situations. Not everyone has the same set of circumstances that they bring with them to the school or when they go home.
It's so true. It's so true. We have one last quick commercial break, y'all, from our sponsors of the show. Stay tuned, stay with us, stay engaged. We'll be right back.
Support for Gentleman Style Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers you precision engineering tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off free worldwide shipping with the code GENSTYLE at manscaped.com.
We are back. This is Gentleman Style Podcast Show. We have Mr. Robert Saul spilling the tea on how to create better children and create community around our children and our families and our homes, and get involved and become very, very active in their roles and in this community. It's not a you problem. It's not a him problem. It's not a them over there problem. It's our problem. It's a community problem, and we need to work harder to come together and to come back together, so we can solve and be more inclusive and solve our own problems together as we grow and as we develop. Doctor, how can people get their hands on the book? How can people connect with you and grow with you?
Well, I mean, I have a Facebook page, and they can certainly connect that way and direct message me. I have a website, mychildren'schildren.com, and the website has an ongoing blog post where I write several of the things that we've sort of talked about. Has all the books. All the books can be ordered via the website, and has a little bit about me. So that's the primary way is the website, and welcome any interactions that people can. I also have a Twitter handle and the
Instagram.
Instagram. And I'm working on a YouTube interaction, so I'm out there and willing to interact any way I can with folks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doctor. Doctor, what advice, what tips would you give to that young boy, that young girl out in the community, that single mom, right, who is on the fence and struggling to raise a good citizen, raise her daughter, raise her son to be great citizens of the world? What advice would you say to that young girl or young boy out in the audience?
Well, I mean, again, it's tough to raise a child. Two parents find it tough to raise a child. I think a single parent can have a very difficult time. I think the important thing is to try to understand your child and the circumstances they're in as best you can, not getting overwhelmed by your own set of circumstances, but that can certainly be difficult. And then as best you can within your own means, within your own capabilities, be as engaged as you can, be a good role model, because I think children learn from their parents. And I see a question or a statement that popped up as a parent of a special needs child. The last 3 years, I've been the pediatrician for special needs children. So I understand what parents have what they go through and how difficult that is, and how the support system needs to be so vast. So it's important as that single mom reach out for help whenever she can and get it in a reasonable fashion. when I say a reasonable fashion, sometimes I tell new moms, they say, everyone's going to tell you how to parent your baby, how to take care of your baby, how to change diapers, how to do this, how to do that. What you do is you smile and say, thank you. And then you do it your own way.
Be polite, right? Be polite, forgive, and just keep moving.
Absolutely. And one other quick tale. I don't say this to pat myself on the back, but one night my son did something that I didn't like, and he was about 7 or 8, and I yelled at him, and he just melted and just went away crying. And my wife got mad at me for yelling, and I got mad at myself, and we went into that family mode that all too many families have been in, where nobody talks to each other for 2 hours, trying to figure out how to get through this. Then we finally settled down, and when we went to bed, I lay down with my son. Son, I'm so sorry what I did. You did something I didn't like, but my reaction was totally wrong, and I really
You apologized.
Yeah, I really want you to know that I'm sorry. And we're in this together, and whatever I can do, I want you to know that I love you, and I'm going to go forward. And he said, Dad, would you be quiet? I said, why? He said, I hate it when you're nice. So I think again, I don't say that story to pat myself on the back, but I think what that tells me is the whole paradigm of conscious parenting I was working on for years before I actually wrote the book.
Absolutely. And it worked, and it was effective, and it kicked in. It set the tone for future parents to follow and emulate and grow from. So thank you, Doctor. Thank you for what you do. This is powerful. Doctor, I want to say this to you publicly. Thank you for giving back in this way. This is huge. What you are doing in your community, into our future. Our children are our future. So I want to say this to you publicly. Don't ever quit. Don't ever give up. We need you. We need what you're doing. And it is truly phenomenal what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you, my audience, for engaging and being a part of this journey as we grow together. I hope this message was impactful. I hope it helped serve you. I hope this serves you today, because it definitely serves me, and it has changed my perspective on how I have learned on being a part of the community instead of trying to distance myself from it and saying, that's your problem, that's her problem, that's not my problem. It's all our problem. It's all our problem. We need to get involved so we can change the trajectory for our future. So our future has a brighter tomorrow. So this is helpful. So like I always end every show, thank you for tuning in. I hope this has served you. Like I end every show, take care of your family, take care of your friends, and always, 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 always take care of business. This is Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast, your favorite gentleman, and Mr. Robert Saul, the good doctor who's taking charge and teaching us how to produce better citizens and become activists in our own communities. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.